Axe2Cap, let me put you on game. Axe2Cap, look at all that you could gain. Business moves, loans, and grants, it's all a part of the game. You could learn all of this that the Queen Sheba explained. Axe2Cap, let me put you on.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's episode of Axe2Cap. I'm your host, Sonserae Cicero, and excited to have our special guest today, Avery Gaddis. Avery Gaddis is the Chief Lending Officer at HECCO E, which is a CDFI located in Hartford, Connecticut. And we're excited to talk to him about economic development, business equity, and access to capital. How are you, Avery?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Excited to talk to you about your role with HEDCO. But before we get to that, I want to have a conversation with you about you. How did you travel down the journey of community? Talk to us a little bit about who Avery is and where Avery is right now in his career.
Thanks. I'll try to keep it as concise as possible. Ultimately, I was an elected official in Waterbury and lost. I lost my election. I won the election, but then I lost in recount because I didn't do any campaigning. I was very complacent, and I ended up losing by 11 votes. It was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Oh my gosh, 11 votes.
I'm glad I lost.
Okay.
You know, you get into these government jobs and you get a little complacent. You get a little bit comfortable. And I was very, very comfortable. So that loss, because I was making money and I was young, I was dating my girlfriend at the time who became my wife. So we were thinking about getting married. So I had to tee that all up. And losing a source of income wasn't in my game plan. So it forces you really to reevaluate things and pivot to see what you need to do to be successful under those circumstances. So I'm glad I lost. And so I was in school getting my MBA in finance, and I started working for a couple of small financial shops. Then I worked for a CDFI in Waterbury. Then I left and worked for a firm in New York. Then I came back and I ended up working for a CDFI in Meriden, Connecticut. Then I also did economic development as well. So I always felt that the whole nonprofit thing, because you work with a lot of nonprofits, when you're in government and finance, you work with a lot of nonprofits. I feel that the whole phraseology of nonprofit is sort of a misnomer. There's nothing really nonprofit about it. And I feel that sometimes we have to kind of shake that moniker and actually be for profit, be entrepreneurial. So I wanted to find a way and find a lane to marry my business acumen with my love for the community, because I'm a product of Waterbury, Connecticut. I'm a small city urban guy. I come from a single family home, my mother. Everybody has a Tyler Perry story. And
you're going to need to share. You'll need to hear at least one of them. Who was your Medea?
My grandmother.
Okay.
You know, my grandmother is one of my best friends. I love her dearly. She's 90. My grandfather's 95. Beautiful. And when I was younger, my grandmother used to sneak me money, little 20s and 10s. Okay. And she used to whisper in my ear, "Baby, go buy those books. Go buy those books." And she fed like my love for reading. I love reading. And I started with the Donald Goings books. Nice. You know, all 16 of them. I just went through them. I think he's was a very vivid writer. So my grandmother has always been a pillar for me. And going back to finances and economics and nonprofits, I felt that I wanted to be transformative and be in a position to kind of go out into the world and show nonprofits, mainly through action, that we don't have to be poor. We don't have to run these organizations into the ground. We can go out and make money. And if you're a well-oiled machine and you're a nonprofit, you should pay your people well. Right. You should invest dollars to send your people to school. And a lot of people think nonprofits are just supposed to, excuse my language, be piss poor. Right. And that's a fallacy.
Stay right there for me, because oftentimes you hear nonprofits say we have to scrap for resources. They're in the pool with everyone else trying to get access to capital so they can scale and grow year over year. What advice do you have for these nonprofits who may be struggling and encountering barriers every turn in order to scale their businesses? Because it's not as easy as, we may make it seem sometimes.
just like business owners and would-be entrepreneurs, I think that some nonprofits have the founder syndrome. I think they get rocked to sleep by their own plans,
Right.
and they're a little bit too passionate, and I need them to be a little bit dispassionate,
Right.
take a step back and really look at the risk and really, really drill down on the business. And it's one thing to chase your dreams and want to raise money, but the act of doing business, the business of doing business, it's a whole different dynamic that I think a lot of folks forsaken.
Talk to us a little bit about compliance and structure and making sure that you have your controls in place, because I think that's where you're going, right? It's nice to have the glitz and glamour of the actual organization on Front Street and the work that we're doing in the community. But what continues to help us stand as an organization, a nonprofit organization? Talk a little bit about those controls.
That's another good question. You're very good at the questions.
Thank you.
A lot of nonprofits, the founders, the board of directors, they have their strategic planning, they have their goals. But here's the problem. There's no focus. There's no laser-like focus. Right now at HEDCO, our Linden team, we're only focused on 2 goals and 2 goals only. Number 1, we want loans out of the door in 60 days. That's 60 days from the time we have a complete application until it's approved. 60 days out the door. Number 2, customer service. We need to return phone calls, emails, meet with people. Those are the goals. Those are the goals until we see that we have made significant, notable progress on those 2 goals. Right. Too many people in nonprofitdom have like 8 goals, a dozen goals. Right. And if you have a dozen priorities, you have no priorities. So I think founders get so wrapped up in chasing their dream, which is very admirable and encouraged. But the whole business of looking at your business, taking every piece of your business, deconstructing it and reconstructing it, and asking yourself, is it efficient? Are we fast? Are we responsive? Are we accountable? And are we transparent? And I just feel, to get to the heart of what you're saying and what you asked me, I just feel that too many leaders, whether in nonprofit world or for-profit world, are playing loose and fast with priorities. They're not prioritizing their business, and they're not setting their business up for success. And what am I talking about success? I'm talking about scalability. They're not scaling their businesses, and they're not talking about succession. What does this look like in 10 years? Do you know that there's 5,000 businesses in the world that are over 200 years old? Japan has half of those businesses, and there's one business in Japan that's over 1,500 years old and is still going in Japan. They build temples. And right now, as I speak to you, they have 36 employees. Japan has the most businesses in the world that are over 200 years old. And you want to know why? Because Japanese business owners plan for 100 years in their laser-like focus. So I think we need to adopt a little bit of that focus.
So talk to me about what some of these business owners and these leaders can do to be more laser focused around growing their business from startup to scalability. Because what happens is, right, we've heard from the last, from like 20, 30 years that most businesses fail within the first 3 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. They fail because we don't have a plan in place, to your point. But most people in just say marginalized communities would say, we don't have access to education. We don't have access to resources. We don't have access to funding. Nobody ever told me. How can we empower them with the tools and resources that they need to be successful?
Number 1 is we have to realize no one's going to save us. Nobody's going to save us.
Say that one more time.
No one's going to save us. No. We have no friends. As the great John Henry Clark used to say, right. We have no friends. And the minute we realize we don't have friends and we do for our own and we collaborate and coordinate and work together to structure a sustainable ecosystem, institutions in our neighborhoods will be better. Right now, if the world were to stop tomorrow, I don't know how many Black people own manufacturing firms. I don't know how many Black people are farmers. And I damn sure don't know how many Black people produce drugs, medical supplies. And the situation we're in as a people is, as far as resources, the ability to make things. Right now, as far as the calculus, is way too weighted to the dominant society. We're a little bit too dependent. So self-sufficiency is the first situation, and that means working together, right? Secondly, going back to planning, you have to plan for growth. You have to plan. You can't hope growth.
Right.
You can't pray growth.
Right.
You could try, but if you don't take action and do the growth, you're gonna be in trouble. And growth means, drilling down a little bit more in your question, understanding what business you're in and how you make your money. How do you make money? And what happens when you interview entrepreneurs, a lot of them really don't know how they make their money. And they get confused about it once you drill down and do the root cause analysis. A lot of people don't know. Apple, is Apple into making computers and iPods and iPhones? No, they're not. They're in the business of making individuals feel like if you buy this device as an individual, you could express yourself uniquely. Apple is the master at throttling emotions. That's the business they're in. They just happen to make devices. And then secondly, a lot of business owners really do not know their numbers. So business is like driving a car. And the more experience you get driving a car, the more instruments pop up on the dashboard. And the more you know how fast you're going, the more you know how you need to slow down and negotiate those curves. So experience matters. So entrepreneurs and business owners and people who lead nonprofits and board members, they need to invest in their sophistication. Let's stop acting like people know what they're doing. People are playing business. How many people told you they got their LLCs and they're happy? I got my LLC, and they're so excited they got their LLC.
Badge of honor.
And they're the CEO. They're the CEO of the LLC.
But not registered with state.
And not making
You registered it.
And not making a penny. So I think we really need to drill down on understanding your numbers, understanding your business, understanding the marketing. As an underwriter, loan officer, when I look at a business plan, the first thing I look at is the marketing plan. Because if the marketing plan is incredible, I question everything. And the reason why I focus on the marketing plan is very simple. No dough, no bread. No dough, no bread. If you don't have people coming into the door consuming your services or widgets, you have a problem. So I always try to gauge when I talk to people, I want to determine quickly, do they understand how to position their company to be competitive? Do they understand how to market what they're selling? And if they don't, we got a problem right there, and we just need to stop and focus on that.
How do you encourage a small business organization or an entrepreneur who's just starting out to create a plan that's sustainable?
This is going to sound contradictory, but I don't like business plans. I don't like them at all. As a matter of fact, when you do the research, very few Fortune 100 and 500 companies started with business plans. You name them, they didn't have a business plan. But here's what they had, and here's what I look for in a plan. I look for, as you're telling me about how you make your money, I need to see it like a movie. And literally, let's use the phraseology, make it rain. As you're explaining your business, I fully understand that you understand your business if it's crystal clear. And I could close my eyes and I just see dollar bills just falling to the floor. Yes. So that tells me that you fully thoughtfully and intentionally about your business. Then the next piece of that is, and this is the number one piece that I look for in a business plan. Do I believe that you could execute what you're telling me? Do I believe you, the person sitting next to me, do I believe you could execute the plan? It sounds good. Going back to your template, you got the business plan from Google Temp. It's easy to get these generic business plans. So we need to look a little bit deeper under the surface to make sure that the individual who wants to borrow $100,000 with zero collateral, but a good dream, I need to feel that that individual is the right person to carry out that plan they laid out. And at the end of the day, I'm looking for that. And do you understand how you make money? But do you understand how to marshal the resources to make the money?
Right.
So I'm looking for connection.
Right.
I'm looking at the individual, their ability to execute the plan. I'm looking at the marketing plan, their ability to attract dollars into their coffers. But then I'm looking for the financial piece to make sure their financial projections support the resources they need to sustain growth. So everything's like connected. So I look for those connections, and if they're not there, we have that conversation. If we have to turn someone down at HEDCO, we turn them down with love. And we let them know that there's resources out there, Small Business Development Council, the Women's Business Development Council, SCORE, and others, YouTube Inc., Google Inc. There's so much free content out there. There's really no excuse these days not to be excellent.
Talk to us about why they should trust HECCO or any CDFI or any lending institution that is out there, when historically some of our small business owners and entrepreneurs have shied away from it. Like, we got mattress money. We got money we put behind in pillowcases in the freezer. Like, why should we steer away from that and trust that these lending institutions can benefit us and help us?
Ultimately, to answer your question succinctly, you can't make money in this country if you don't partner with lending institutions. You just cannot. I mean, J.P. Morgan saved the United States 3 times. Right. Him and his banker friends had to bail us out. At the end of the day, you have to. And I don't really use the word trust. I use dependability and reliability. And I do think it cannot be transactional. It cannot be transactional. And that I see a lot of my banker friends and a lot of finance folks, they're all about the numbers. They're all about pushing a button. They're all about their bonuses. At the end of the day, my number one job is to help people fulfill their dreams. I tell people it's corny. It's really corny. But I tell people I'm a chief dream maker officer. I love it. I don't, because if you look at it through the lending lens, it's transactional. Right. If you look at it as a partnership, it's more enriching, rewarder, and mutually sustaining. So that's what I'm looking for. Win-win situations. I give you some money, you pay us back with interest, you fulfill your dreams, send your kids to college, everything is dandy. But I don't want to skip over something that's very important about building trust or dependability. It's how you deal with the clients and our partners in the community who are trying to provide for their families. When you ask them for tax returns, you just can't ask them for tax returns. You got to explain to them why you need them. Right. And you really have to watch your tone. Right. And you really have to be emotionally and socially intelligent, especially when you're dealing with our people. We could be a little rough on each other. We could be a little rough. I tell people all the time, if you are part of an organization that's a bunch of Black folks, yes, you could run any country company in the world. It's boot camp.
Military got nothing on
you go from a collection of Black people to a collection of white folks. It's a whole different vibe.
Right, absolutely.
Todd is like, okay, Avery, whatever you need. Whatever. Rashawn is like, why we have to do that? But so the way we treat our people and the way we communicate why we do things, right, and it's important to make them to help them to understand why we're asking for a mound of information. Right. And that's the other piece of it. A lot of our folks really don't have all that information compiled in one place quickly. They have to go fish for it. Right. In our business, because we're mission driven, we have to account and allow for that.
And a lot of us have limited access to support. Staff, to services. And a lot of times these small businesses are mom and pop shops, and they're trying to do everything on their own. How do we help them be streamlined in having their paperwork to get this paperwork?
I think there needs to be a cadre of thought leaders sprinkled throughout the communities. Because unfortunately, there's no one silver bullet. This is a situation we're going to have to address literally block by block. Right. block by block. It's gonna be a slow generational drip, but it starts with individuals like yourself, organizations like Sheba, HEDCO, and others, NAACP, the churches. It starts with us recognizing that we need to build our own institutions in our communities to ideally, without the help of others. Because when others help us build our institutions, there's they exercise a little bit of control, and it's been problematic. What's happening in our communities have undoubtedly and factually have been engineered. We have been broken, and people have given our people body blows for decades, for generations. And I'm not going to be apologetic about talking about it. And I know it makes people uncomfortable. And I know that certain people don't want us to have these conversations. But people have deliberately broke our communities, not giving us resources. We used to have thousands of black banks from North Carolina to Oakland. And they ripped up the community by sending highways through the communities. They put bankers on the board who mess with the money. And all this stuff is documented and factual. So I think that in order for us to have an honest conversation, a robust, wholesome conversation about where we are, we most certainly need to address that piece, because that piece is still going on.
Absolutely. So how do we combat the barriers of the system that has been historically set up against us?
Mm-hmm. We have to recognize that, and I like that question, but the fight starts with the babies. The fight starts with the babies. It's not too late for you and I, because you and I are doing the work. Right. We're here doing the work. But we can't do everything, and we can't boil an ocean overnight. Right. So that's what I mean by block, organization by organization. But if we could battle and wage a fearsome, robust battle for these babies' minds, their hearts, we're going to turn the tide. It starts with the babies. It starts with training them, not just on financial literacy. Forget how to write a check. Our babies need to understand how the EU works. They need to understand the euro. They need to understand how central banking and fractional banking works. They need to understand that, hey, if you're 15 years old and you're hanging out at the house, you need to go to the Fed chairman's minutes, the open source committee, and you need to read the minutes to understand. Let me give you an example about that. Okay. So it was like 4 years ago, and as the politicians are trying to figure out how to sustain their local economies against the backdrop of COVID, Jerome Powell, who is the chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank, they have what they call the Fed Open Market Committee. It's like a big committee and they talk about a lot of things. So if you go back and look at the minutes of the meeting, Jerome Powell and all his banker friends, this is what he said. He said, the economy's too strong right now. We still need to lose 2 million jobs. So let's unpack that. While Governor Lamont and his friends were running around trying to shore up resources for Connecticut, the federal chairman was saying openly and publicly in the meeting, got to read the minutes though, that the Federal Reserve was engineering the shutting or contracting of 2 million more jobs. So as politicians and governors are trying to fight an uphill battle, you have the central bank kind of tempering that. And so we need to understand more than just writing checks, more than just 850 credit scores. We need to understand how global systems work for us and against us, because white supremacy and what's happening to us is a global thing. Everyone teams up against us to play team ball against us.
Why is that?
Because resources are limited, and we are the bastard stepchild of the world, and it's by design. I mean, if you want to take me to task on it, look at after World War I, how they actually had a meeting with a map of Africa, and Europe just carved up Africa. Right. So what I'm saying to you, there's plenty, it's not my conjecture, it's in their books that they wrote.
It is so imperative and so critical for us as the parents to make sure that we're steering our babies in that direction, to understand and respect the journey of money. If you don't know where it came from, you don't know where it's going. Mm-hmm. If you don't know where it's going, you don't know how to survive with it. Mm-hmm. And so, I love what you're saying, although it may be a little tough for some people to hear it. It may be a little uncomfortable. It's okay. We need to normalize these conversations so the babies can understand that while you're on TikTok, you need to be looking at the stock market. You need to understand how to read different stocks. How is the euro faring up against the Canadian dollar, the US dollar? How is the Canadian dollar faring up against the US? How is the US dollar? You in the US, how is the US dollar doing for us? What does that mean for us if the US dollar drops in value?
That's right.
And so oftentimes I think that we get uncomfortable with having the conversation about money, surrounding money, because most of us grew up without it.
That's right.
We just trying to hold on to what we got right now. And we know that there is a system that was built that has been driving a highway or a railroad system directly through our community because they know, or the system knows, that if we get too empowered, we're out of control. And unfortunately, I think that with the current climate, with the current focus on social media, no one's even reading. Project 2025 was right in all of our faces. It's right in our face. And so if you ask the babies how many of them read it, how many would you think out of 20 would say they read Project 2025?
Probably not many, because that's part of the problem too. We don't read the way we should read. The other stuff,
Absolutely.
or the game that's in the book.
Right.
You know.
Right. But we'll read the instructions on how to utilize the Xbox, or how to work a computer when we need to get something done, because that's a part of what we love and our passion. We don't really want to read past the instructions of how to get from point A to point B when it comes to the fun stuff. It's all the gravy in between that gets a little thick that nobody wants to touch. So I appreciate you going down that road and having that conversation, because I too agree that we don't read enough. I don't think that our babies even read anything about Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. They don't know anything about Marcus Garvey. Half of them. Some of them do, and some of them don't. I did ask about 15 interns last year if they read Project 2025, and only 2 said they knew about it, and only 1 said he had gotten to page 238 and stopped. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness. If we're not preparing this generation, then we're in a world of trouble. Once again, Avery Gaddis, Chief Lending Officer with HECCO Inc. Thank you so much for being here with Sheba and Axe2Cap. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube, on our social media handles. Sheba, Axe2Cap, we appreciate you joining us today. Thank you, and have a good one.
Axe2Cap, let me put you on game. Axe2Cap, look at all that you could gain. Business moves, loans, and grants, it's all a part of the game. You could learn all of this that the Queen Sheba explained. Axe2Cap, let me put you on